Good morning.
Good morning.
I want you to know it's an honor for me to stand in your presence. I've heard about you. How many of you have not heard me speak before? Raise your hand. Well, have fun. If I was talking to you one-on-one, first thing I'd do is ask you, what books have you read? What trainings have you taken? What words and concepts are you familiar with as you explore this idea of being God in form? Then we could do this whole thing based on the words you're familiar with, the words you're used to. Since my people are all Montana people, and I got a little country in me, my bet is, as I get on a roll this morning, I might say something a little different than you're used to. I might tell a story different. I might quote Ernest Homer, or even quote scripture different.
Amen.
And all I would ask is, if we run into a place where there's a little difference, please look past it, because I guarantee you my sole intention this morning is to remind each of us how absolutely magnificent and powerful we are right now. So, with that said, you know, our philosophy talks about peace, talks about grace, it talks about acceptance, it talks about love and joy. This morning, I'm going to be talking about you discovering your power and authority. How'd you like to wake up in the morning, and before you do any conscious work, you feel this sensation start sort of down deep in your gut, and it just starts to move up through your body, and by the time it gets to your head, it can only be languaged as something like, "Oh goody, another day." How'd you like to go to bed at night and as you snuggle under your covers and fluff up your own pillow, without doing any conscious work, you find yourself just thrilled and delighted about who you are and what you're up to in your life? How'd you like to have a body that works perfectly and that's pain-free? That's the promise. Those kinds of things are the promise of science of mind. You see, science of mind is about you making your dreams come true, and then through making your dreams come true, you discover who you are and you discover your relationship to God. In fact, Ernest Holmes is real clear. He says the real proof of the pudding of this philosophy we call science of mind is when you use it to get what you want. Because he says it's through getting what you want, your personal desires, that you begin to experience how this power works for you, and you begin to experience your relationship to God. Now there might be some of you in here that are thinking, "Oh goody, we got another guest speaker who's going to come and talk to us about this pie in the sky stuff that you can have whatever you ask for, that all things are possible if you believe they are." And yes, that's exactly. But let me give you, for those of you who don't know me, let me give you a little of my background. When I was 22, I hurt my back. I was working construction in the summertime. Pain was debilitating. So finally, a year later, I just agreed to have a spinal fusion. They said, "We're going to take this, you got this ruptured disc, we're going to take some bone from your hip, lay it around those two vertebrae, and Be in the hospital a couple of weeks, wear a brace for 6 months, and after a year or so, you'll be almost as good as new. So I went in and had a spinal fusion. Somehow during surgery, my spine got infected with the E. coli bacteria. E. coli is a bad bug. And this was 50 years ago, it was worse then. My orthopedic surgeon said, look, with E. coli, there's not a good antibiotic, so I just need to cut this out of your body. So over the next year, he did 4 of them. They're called debridements. What they really are is they go in and cut infection out of your body. And every time he went in, he said the infection was worse, it had spread. So finally, after the last surgery, he said, look, this is way out of my league. You need more than one primary care physician. You need a bunch of experts working on this. So he transferred me to the University of Washington Medical Center, big teaching hospital in Seattle. I went in there, and within a couple of days, I became a real celebrity. Turned out I had the worst case of osteomyelitis of the spine they'd ever seen. So my doctor became his visiting professor from England. Supposed to be the #3 orthopedic surgeon in the whole world. The other professors didn't talk like that, but the interns and residents did. This guy was kind of standoffish, I thought. And he said, look, you know there's not a good antibiotic, so I'm just going to cut this out of your body. But I don't want to be blindsided when I go in, so I want to do tests to find out the extent of this infection. Okay. I mean, I don't know about you, but I grew up saying okay to doctors. So they did tests for 2 weeks, 14 days, all day, every day, they did tests. They poked me in places I didn't even know I had places. Anyway, finally got some good x-rays, and he came in that afternoon, and when he came in that afternoon with his resident and his several interns, he was different. He wasn't as standoffish. I mean, I wasn't into feelings then, I was a construction worker, but there was something different about him. And he came in, he said, Terry, we've got these x-rays and it shows the extent of the infection, but it's a lot more invasive than I ever imagined. So I'm gonna have a meeting with tomorrow with some other specialists, and then we'll come in and tell you what we're gonna do. Okay. So he left. An hour or so later, my wife came, and the first thing she asked me was, what has happened? I said, I don't know, what are you talking about? She said, when I came down the hall, when the nurses saw me, they turned around and walked away. Oh. What has happened? I said, I don't know, they couldn't put x-rays. Next day she came in the afternoon, and we waited for this meeting to take place. It's kind of a long story, but it gets to a really good point. I encourage you to hang in. So we waited for this meeting. 5 o'clock came and went, nobody showed up, which surprised me because my doctors are all professors. Usually professors go home at 5. 6 o'clock came and went, 7 o'clock came and went, 8:15, door to my private room opened up, and in walked 6 surgeons. 6. And if it's good news, there's usually one person to tell you. And if it's bad news, they tell you by committee. A guy in lead was orthopedic surgeon from England. Behind him was head of the Department of General Surgery. Behind him was head of the Department of Infectious Disease. Behind them, the treetop residents and the head nurse. And this is what they said. The infection has spread. It's no longer just in those 2 vertebrae where you have the fusion. It's up and down your spine. It's followed both of your sciatic nerves in your thighs. It's throughout your pelvic area. It's throughout your abdomen. And the E. coli is eating holes in the lower end of your colon, so we think the germs are communicating back and forth. And we've got to stop this now, Terry, because it has now become life-threatening. So tomorrow we're going to take you down the operating theater, and first the general surgeons are going to start from the front. They're going to start as low as they can go down here in your pelvic area. They're going to come up around your belly button and go almost up to your sternum. We're going to open all of that up. We're going to cut out all the infected tissue, separate your organs out of the way, and when we get onto the spine, the orthopedic surgeons will chisel and scrape the infection out of your spine. When we're done with that, we're going to roll you over, and the orthopedic surgeons are going to start. They're going to start as low as they can go down here between your buttocks. We're going to come up mid-back and open all that up, cut out all the infected tissue, chisel and scrape the infection out of your spine. You went into a lot more detail than I'm giving you. When we're done with that, 2 teams of surgeons are going to start at your belt line, open up both your buttocks and follow your sciatic nerves into your thighs. And when we're done with that, we're going to tip you up on the end and come in from the bottom.
Wow.
Because it's completely engulfed the lower end of your spinal column. He got about 5 minutes into that thing and I just started shaking. The head nurse came over and held me on one side. My wife came over and held me on the other side. And I just laid in bed, watched this man talk about what he was going to do to my body. They were going to gut me like a dead deer. When he got done, he sat down on a chair and pulled it up next to my bed and reached out and took my hand. And that's when I knew I was in trouble, because this guy was not a touchy-feely doctor. He said, "Son, I know how radical this must seem to you, but we've got to stop this now. When we're done with the debridement, the antibiotics that we do have in the drains, we're pretty sure we can stop it from spreading anymore. The bad news is, we can virtually assure you, you are going to lose the use of your left leg through nerve damage." And then he just looked at me. And I just looked at him. And he just looked at me. And I just looked at him. And finally I thought, it must be my turn to say something. And I heard come out of my own mouth, "That's okay. That's okay. If you've got to do this, let's just get it over with." But even as I heard those words come out of my own mouth, I thought, what has happened to me? What has happened that in just 1 year I would so willingly give up the use of my left leg? But I no sooner said that than he reached up with his other hand and clamped mine between his, and he said, "Son, we've got to do this. The bad news is if it's as extensive as we think it is, there's a good chance you're going to lose some of the mobility of your right leg. You're probably going to lose the control of your bowels and your bladder, and there's a very good chance you're going to end up sexually impotent." That was just before my 24th birthday. The resident who'd been with me for the 2 weeks of tests, when all the doctors left, he stayed, and he sat on my bed with my wife and he held me. He didn't say anything, he just held me. And when I finally calmed down, he said, "Terry, we don't know what's going to happen. We've never seen anything like this. But what we do know is you cannot expect to come out of this ordeal whole." The name of my book is "The Hell I Can't." I invite you this morning that if I say something that's a little different than what you're used to, get past it. Because when I talk to you about your power and authority on this physical plane to create the life you dream of, it's not just because I read a few books. I got to live this message that we call science of mind. The next day when they went in, they opened up the pelvic area, and they said the lower end of my colon was just perforated. They said there weren't any holes in it, it was like a sieve. So they cut my bowels, they pulled my bowels out and clipped them and sewed them to my tummy. It's called the Double-Barrel Colostomy. They said you're going to go to the bathroom in a plastic bag the rest of your life. A month later they went in to do the big one, and I was on the table for 13 and a half hours, took 27 units of blood. And they stopped after 13 and a half hours because they were losing me. When I came out of the coma 4 days later, they went in to finish it. It didn't work. A month later, they did another one. It didn't work. 3 weeks after that, they did another one, and that didn't work. A month after that, or 4 weeks after that, they started up here 1.5 inches wide and took all the tissue out of my back and buttocks so they could see my spine. And put me in a body cast for 6 months while that healed. And that didn't work. When I was in the hospital for the 14th surgery, they sent me to see a psychiatrist, because by then I wasn't a good patient. When I walked into his office, he created a safe space. I didn't know that's what he was doing, or I wouldn't have felt so safe. And he kept asking, "How are you doing?" And I learned early, you don't tell people how you're doing. When they come in to visit you and they say, "How are you doing?" if you tell them what it's like to have you, they won't come back and visit you. So you say, "I'm doing fine." But he kept digging. Finally, I unloaded. I pounded on this table. I paced back and forth in front of his desk, and I cursed a lot. Because my Uncle Larry, who was my father image, always told me, "Son, if something's important to you, it's also important to use strong language." asked him why, and he said, I don't know. But next time an actor will come with a hammer, shake and say, oh golly, and see if it helps. And every time I curse, he'd say, look at your anger. Look at my anger. I'm in the hospital for the 14th surgery on my spine. Finally, he looked at me and he said, son, it's time to take off your rose-colored glasses. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I want to read you a letter. And he opened up my medical records. He had stacks of them on his desk. And it was a letter from the head of the Department of Orthopedic Surgery to the insurance company, because I hurt my back on the job, so industrial insurance was paying. And every time I'd have surgery, they'd write a letter and say, when are you going to fix this guy? And doctors write letters back, and I got them all. This one says, Dear sirs, as you may not be aware, Mr. McBride's condition is not curable. He will have chronic osteomyelitis for the balance of his life, and because of the severity of the infection and the invasiveness of the procedures needed to keep the drains open, unless Mr. McBride is extremely fortunate, he will be left with significant permanent disability. And he looked up at me and he said, Terry, there's a good chance you're going to spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair. And if you come work with me, I can assist you to face that reality if it happens with dignity. And I said, I don't want to learn how to live in a wheelchair with dignity. I want to learn how to get well. And we argued, and we fought, and I cursed. Then he opened up a letter from the head of the Department of General Surgery that said, the lower end of Mr. McBride's colon has been so involved with the E. coli infection it is doubtful it will ever heal enough to have his colostomy reversed. And he looked up and he said, you're probably going to have that colostomy the rest of your life. If you come work with me, I can assist you to face that without your anger. And we argued, and we fought. Finally, I looked at him and I said, look, I know what you guys believe. And I'm not making you wrong for that. But I'm reading these books. And these books, they say there's a part of me that's not sick. These books say there's a facet of me that's not afraid. And what these books talk about is that if I can get in touch with that aspect of me, if I can truly own that who I am is that facet of me that's not sick, that's not afraid, these books say from there I can learn how to create reality instead of face reality. And this loving, caring physician looked at me and smiled and said, Terry, that's your ego talking. You want to own these principles and use them in your life, you gotta want it bad. Because you try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. When your failures add up to some magical number, I will guarantee you that somebody in this congregation will encourage you to give up your priorities for some grander scheme. Perhaps God has a bigger plan for you than you just getting what you want. Perhaps this is some sacred contract you made before you came in, and before your life's purpose can be fulfilled, you have to fulfill this contract. Perhaps this is some karmic debt you're working off. Or all those other lies that encourage you and I to give up our personal priorities for some grander scheme. Listen. There are virtually thousands and thousands of books written about science of mind and how you can use it. From my perspective, there's two main points in all of those books. The first main point that we talk about in science of mind is you are already holy. We start from the idea that you're already a unique expression of God. You don't have to fix yourself. All of that original sin stuff and all that stuff, you got to forgive enough, let go enough, be willing enough, all of that goes out of the window when you own the first two steps of treatment. Ernest Holmes says this is the foundation for our training, for our teachings, for all of what we do. And that foundation is that you're already holy. On page 121 of Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says this, whatever you believe to be true about God, declare that to be the truth about yourself. This is what this sacred space, this magnificent spiritual family you have. Here we get to come together and start from the idea that I'm already holy. On page 180, Ernest Holmes says this: our union with the divine is not that we are one with God. Our union with the divine is not that we are one in God, for these imply separation and duality. He says the truth that sets you free is that you are of God. You are right now some aspect of that infinite power we call God. That's the truth that sets you free. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. The truth isn't all these other ideas. The truth that sets you free is that right now you are a unique incarnation of the divine. As Ernest says, you are the personification of that which is God expressing as woman. God expressing as man. That's the truth that sets you free. This is what I was trying to tell the psychiatrists. You know, when we argued and fought, I said, I'm not my stuff. I'm not, he said, have you looked at your medical records? I'm not my medical records. There is some facet of me that's already holy. The truth that sets you free is that you are divine. And what does it set you free from? The second point in this great philosophy we call science of mind. And that is, you do not have to change for the infinite power of creation to back up your belief system. It already does. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. He didn't say, when you forgive enough as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. He didn't say, when you do this. What he said was, it's already done as you believe. This was the foundation of even his teachings when he said, know ye not your sons and daughters of the Most High? That's the place you start. And the next thing is, your belief already creates your reality. This is what Ernest is talking about on page, in Living the Science of Mind on page 122, when he says, the power within you is the law, an aspect of God that is an all-powerful medium. It's already in you. And you have the power to use this medium any way you see fit. We're so busy sometimes talking about there's a power you can use, but you have to use it for the highest best good of everybody concerned. You can't use it on somebody else unless they ask you. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And we're so busy with those can'ts, so what do? We treat for divine right action. Ernest Holmes never said treat for divine right action. He said be specific. The law knows only to agree. That's the second point. You're already holy, and this infinite power is already backing up your belief system. This is what science is proving today. Candace Pert, in her book Molecules of Emotion, she's this great, incredible scientist saying every cell in your body is always paying attention to the energy that you allow to flow through it. And then your cells respond based on this energy and turn genes on or off based on the energy going through your body. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, says the same thing. Norman Diaz, The Brain That Changes Itself. Science is proving now that your consciousness is already not only creating your physical body, it's already creating the outside circumstances in your life. It's already done as you believe. You're already holy. And what the challenge is we get to talk about that. But then we go to this group that says you're a XYZ, and before you can be holy, you need to hold your palms up or have your feet flat on the floor so the energy from the Mother Earth flows up. You breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, reach a good clean energy. You got to get them all spinning in the right direction. And you got to get them the right color. We don't do that. You're already holy, and the infinite power of the universe already responds with what Ernest calls mechanical regularity to the spontaneity of your thought. What that means is that all you and I have to do is own the first one. I'm already a spiritual being, having a human experience. I'm God, expressing uniquely as me. Number two, this infinite power is already responding to my belief systems. It's already done as I believe. When you own those, you don't have to do any more of those about enough books. all this stuff that comes and says, oh, we got a new training, you need to forgive enough, you need to let go enough, you need to be willing enough. You don't have to do any of that. All that's left is take charge of your belief system. You're holy, and the infinite power of the universe backs up your consciousness. If you don't have the life you want, then change your beliefs. It's that simple. And it's that profound. How in 30 minutes do I reach inside your heart? How in 30 minutes do I reach inside your mind and remind you that you're already God expressing uniquely as you, and the infinite power of creation is already backing up your belief? But Ernest goes further than just laying it out. He understands that the only way for you and I to really own this is not through just study and theory. You've got to practice it. This is what he's getting at when he says you can only know as much as you can demonstrate. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said faith without works is dead. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. You've got to begin to use this on your dreams and your aspirations. When I walked into my first Science of Mind church in Seattle, all those years ago, I picked up a pamphlet, and it said this on the front: Science of Mind is a correlation of the laws of science, the opinions of philosophy, and the revelations of religion applied to human needs and the aspirations of mankind. This center is about your dreams. This center is about you using these principles on your aspirations, your priorities. And by doing that, you get feedback through your own human senses of your divinity. Because when you make your dreams come true, what you get is an experience of self that's even bigger than your dreams. I'm 70 years old. I don't have a bad back. I'm not recovering from a bad back. I have none of the physical limitations they told me I would have. And I don't have a colostomy anymore. Because I healed my body. Sometimes when I say that, people come up to me and they say, don't you mean God healed your body? I look them right in the eye and say, no, I don't. My God didn't make me sick. And my God didn't make me well. My God simply communicated, I adore you just the way that you are. And you pick the game, and I will play with you there. What I ask you this morning, as your brother, is what game have you picked? You have the opportunity to pick a new game, a new reality, not just here. What this center offers is where we come together to explore this. 100 years ago in this country, what I said so far this morning, you could have been killed for. Where else are you going to discover and explore these possibilities? Where else can you know, when Thanksgiving is coming up, sitting around the table with your extended family, you think, when people are saying, so what's going on with you? You say, you know what I got last Sunday at church? I'm the living Christ. You think they'd understand it? I doubt it. Where else can you explore with your sisters and brothers? What does it mean today to be holy? What does it mean today that I get to make my dreams come true? And that's what this center offers you. It's a teaching center to assist you in making your dreams come true. And on September 30th, you have one of the best trainings, I think, available. The Foundations of Science of Mind. This is where I know people that have taken the Foundations class 4 times. Because every time they go through it, they learn something else. Because in that class, you learn the basics of science of mind and how to begin to apply this. How to figure out what your priorities are. How to figure out how you can stay on track using these principles. There's so much for you to get involved here. Wednesday night service, I mean, just read in your program, you've got all kinds of stuff. From the bottom of my heart, it's an honor to stand before you. And my dear friend Peggy Price, who I've known for so long. And from the bottom of my heart, I encourage you to get involved in these teachings. Take classes, apply them, and never, never, never take no for an answer. Use these principles and believe in your dreams. No matter how far away they may seem, believe in your dreams.